All right, what's up, everyone? Roy here, and you were listening to the Clemenz with a Z podcast. Another episode here of the We Were in a Cult series where I get to interview former members of the ICOC to have them tell their stories and to hopefully make sense of this crazy, wild thing that we were all a part of. And just before we start, just want to give you guys a quick trigger warning. This story will involve instances of self-harm. So just want to let you guys know that beforehand before we get started. So here we go. So yeah, I have Marissa here. What's up, Marissa?
Hey,
Glad to have you on here. Thank you for doing this.
I'm glad to be doing it.
Yeah. Let's jump right into it. So, how'd you get involved in the church?
So when I was in middle school, I went to middle school with a couple of girls whose families were members, and they reached out to my parents and kind of brought my parents into the church. And so since I was in middle school, I came along for the ride.
So you're a pseudo kingdom kid.
Yes, I think that's, I guess, how I
Yeah.
remember the life before the church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But I mean, you're talking about from like seventh grade till when I left, right before I turned 21. I mean, that's like pretty formidable years of
Hmm.
brain development and
Yeah.
personality development and really figuring out who you are in this
Hmm.
world. So for those prime years, I was a member.
Now, before church, did were your parents religious? Did you understand who God was? Things like that?
Um, I wouldn't say like super religious. We were Methodist and we would kind
Hmm.
of church hop on just Christmas, Easter, things like that. I remember going to like vacation Bible schools with um, a lady that lived in our neighborhood who I was actually very close friends with her daughter, and my younger sister was close friends with her other daughter. She ran a daycare out of her home. So
Hmm.
over the summers, we would go to a Baptist vacation Bible school there. And outside of that, that was really all the church experience I had.
So like you just had a like basic view of like what God is or things like that.
Yeah, it was basic, and he was loving. I think because when
Hmm.
you go at a young age, that's how they present God as like
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
father figure, and like because they want it to be fun. They don't want you to be scared to come to church when you're like
Hmm.
in elementary school. So you hear all the happy stories, and
Yeah.
um, it was like he was a protector kind of a way.
Cool. And so when you started going to church, I mean, was it good? What were the positives about it?
The
Or like,
friendships were
mhm,
definitely a positive. I think like we didn't have a lot of family friends at the
mhm,
time. My parents, when I was born in Conyers, Georgia, they had a good group of like work friends and neighborhood friends there. And then when we moved to Marietta, Georgia, it just didn't we didn't meet as many people
mhm,
as they had left there. So I know they were looking for friendships as well. So you come into this church and everybody's happy and they all come up to you and they're like excited to have you there and like,
mhm.
you know, going over to friends' houses to like hang out and play and stay the night. And so it's just like something we hadn't really experienced before on such a big level.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm,
we had close friends in the neighborhood. And like I was in Girl Scouts in elementary school, so I had like friends from that. But as far as like whole family friendships and them being all together, all in one place, that was new.
mhm.
And so that was probably the most, for me at the time, like appealing part of it was just the friendships and the love. And I didn't not have love in my family beforehand, but it was just like there was family outside of blood, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, we were really good at that, making people feel like this is gonna be a second family.
Yes.
We could, well, the word what we use, love bombing, that's been used a lot, you know.
Yes. I agree.
Hmm.
That's kind of how it was, especially I know my parents felt that like
Hmm.
you come hang out with us, be our best friends, sit with us, like we love you, we're going to study the Bible with you. And then as soon as like the Bible studies were done, they were on their own. Um and it just progressively got worse. I think they still tried to hold on to friendships that they were love bombed with. But these people had just moved on to their next
Yeah, you
challenge
could.
so that they can say they brought another family in.
Mhm. That's very par for the course. A lot of people were like that. You would study the Bible and then you wouldn't see him anymore. I mean, I felt that, sometimes in more in campus, like the guys that were in some of my studies, minus at one or two. Yeah, you just move on
And
to
it was
someone
more,
new.
it's a bigger deal, I think, like you said, for like campus and for
Hmm.
my parents and the marrieds. Because I mean, I was still in middle school. My sister's still in elementary school. It's so you go to all of the activities. So I didn't really experience um like the betrayal until until we moved schools in high school.
Hmm.
Um I had so I went to middle school with other members of the church, and then when I went to high school, I was the only disciple in the high school. Everybody else went to Walton, or some like a couple were at Wheeler together, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so at Sprayberry from freshman to junior year by myself, um, and had a hard time with it. Like I was had a crush on a boy, not at the church. My
Hmm.
parents found out that we were talking, and they called his parents and were like, "This ends now," even though we never hung out outside of school. Like it was just
Damn.
like they had. So I was in color guard. I was a band nerd. I was in color guard, and my parents volunteered. So
You were a band nerd? I was a band nerd.
mhm,
I played
yep,
saxophone.
no, I loved it. I did the color guard, and I really
Heck yeah.
like really had a good time doing it. And then I had knee surgery when I was 15 and couldn't do it anymore.
Knee surgery at 15?
Yeah,
What'd you do?
it, my knee dislocated multiple times, so I had to have like a pretty major knee surgery. Um, yeah, but that was the end of my color guard days.
Yeah, I've torn ACLs in both my knees, so I've had two knee
No,
surgeries.
no, 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 no. It's actually still something I struggle with. I've had three total knee surgeries on it now. The last one was not even a
Damn.
year ago, and it still dislocates. So I love
Dude,
that for
that's
me.
it's the worst feeling in the world, isn't it? When your knee does
Terrible.
something it's not supposed to, scares the shit out of you.
It does. It does. And like get nauseous with it and all that. And now it's just something I have to accept that I'm like, I just have to
Yeah.
carry this burden that I have stretchy joints that don't like to stay where they're supposed to.
Now, so you were in, I'm sorry that we're going down this, but
I know.
it's,
It's okay.
were you doing like a color guard thing when you dislocated your knee?
No, it would happen in very benign situations. Like we were
Oh,
walking up
okay.
and doing splits and I looked back and my kneecap was on the side of my leg because I felt it go out. Or there was one time I was walking in the movie theater and like
Uh-huh.
it's on like a slant
Yep.
and
Hmm.
like I just took a step like at an awkward angle, like walking
Yeah.
across to my seat and the knee dislocated there. So and now it just happens like
Yeesh.
walking on like up a hill, it'll happen. So it was not fun as a 15-year-old to go through. But I will say, give the church credit. I had a lot of support like
Good for you.
during that time. People came and visited me because I had to stay overnight in the hospital for it. People came and
Hmm.
visited me and like they made sure I got one of those encouragement dates. Although I don't know that in hindsight that was the best idea because it was the 4th of July and we went like downtown to watch fireworks and I was on crutches
Oh,
and we took
geez.
MARTA and it was
Oh, you bet you didn't feel encouraged, did you?
oh, I was I
It
so
was
I
awkward.
struggled because I was miserable, but I was thankful because like I said, because I went to a high school that nobody else went to, and we only lived like 20 minutes away from East Cobb, but it felt like such a hassle for people to be able to
Hmm.
come, like, pick me up and take me on a date. So I was
Such a
actually
hassle.
very thankful that I did get to go on the date. It was just like, your kids, it's not
Mhm.
parents, like, planning these dates. It's like it's high school
Yeah.
guys. Like they're not gonna realize that like this girl probably doesn't want to walk, take Marta on
Yeah.
crutches and like have to go downtown with all these drunk people.
I hated, so like this knee like walking with crutches is the worst. But I got my first knee injury was at camp. I got I got hit by I got hit by a girl playing ultimate frisbee out in
Oh,
one of the fields. We
oh
were
my god,
going for the same frisbee and she nudged into me and then I landed in a divot and my knee went two different directions.
please don't
And
tell me
so and I remember the worst that was the yeah, I had to leave camp, which was the worst because camp was the best.
it was.
I was gonna be like a counselor. I was like I was gonna do a 2 week stint and I was so excited about that. But then blew out the knee. But it was at the beginning of the summer, and so I'm on crutches in the summer, and you just get sweaty and hot and
And
uncomfortable.
raw under your armpits.
Oh, it's the worst. Oh, anyway. Well, good luck with that knee.
Thank you.
I'm thinking, but anyway, back to it. So yeah, so you're by yourself. I mean, I remember being by myself in high school at the school and just wanting to be around everybody else. I mean, was
Did
that kind of you felt that as well?
I did. And my mom actually told me when I told her I was gonna be on the podcast just to give her, like, a heads up.
Hmm.
Um, she said that my parents asked me how I felt about moving to Walton, and I told her that's what I wanted to do. And I don't remember them asking me, but it doesn't surprise me because my parents,
Really?
like, they rebelled in their own ways. Um,
Hmm.
like having a daughter at a high school by herself when all of her church friends are at another school, and then you're gonna tell her she can't have friendships outside of the church, like, I wouldn't have survived. Like, so they let me have friends outside of school,
Hmm.
and I was able to, like, go to these friends' house. Um, it was always to study or something like that, or, like, it was never, like, it wasn't supposed to be to hang out, but I actually did do things I shouldn't have done, like, we went to a Limp Bizkit concert.
Heck yeah. Limp Biscuit.
My parents didn't know about that. That was me being deceitful. That was me being a normal freaking teenager is what it
What
was. But,
year was
um,
was that like?
it would have been my junior year because
So this
we
was like
were
right when
like, they
$3
drove.
Bill Y'all came out. Oh, this is like right in the beginning. Sorry, I was a huge Limp Bizkit fan in high
Oh,
school.
yeah, me too. I did it all for the nookie, that was, like, my jam.
Oh my gosh, you went to Limp, you rebel.
I know. It
Oh,
was and there was, like,
jeez.
no alcohol, there was no I mean, obviously, because 'cause I'm, like, 17, but, like, I just wanted to go to a freaking concert with my friends, and it was something I
Yeah.
couldn't ask
Hmm.
my parents about because my parents would be like, "Limp Bizkit? Absolutely not." And
Hmm.
so I just said I was going to my friend's house, and we went to the concert and came back and made it alive and, like, didn't die in the mosh.
Because I mean, Limp Bizkit was rough back then. I mean, they're still kind of
Yeah,
rough, but
yeah. I did actually overheat and pass out, like, in line to get water. Yeah,
uh-huh.
and it was crazy,
Do you
and it was
remember where it was at? What venue it was?
like a warehouse or a barn or something. If I heard it, I would remember.
It might have been the International Ballroom.
Yep. No,
Um,
I
because
might
it
even
wasn't the tap. It
I might have
was
the
it the
tickets somewhere. It wasn't the
was it
Tabernacle.
pro okay. Because my first show was at the Tabernacle. I got to see Sugar Ray. And I remember walking into there and being like, our church almost bought this. This is bananas. Like
My
being in that. Yeah, you forgot about that when our church almost bought the Tabernacle.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I do remember that. That's crazy.
I remember because it was Sugar Ray and Everlast. I mean, this is 1999. Like that's how.
And I think Limp Bizkit was, like, probably 98
Yeah. And
when
so I
people actually
remember,
concerts.
but I remember a girl flash the crowd, and I remember being like, "Holy crap!" I've seen Kit McKean preach from that stage, and now in the same place, I'm seeing a girl flash a bunch of people. This is wild. This is weird. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
mean, I definitely saw things that, like,
hmm,
at the concert that you hear about in sermons, right?
hmm,
Like,
yep, hmm,
these crazy sinful people that are all going to hell because they don't come to church with you. But it was like, it
yeah,
was a
it
great
was
time.
fun.
I had a great
Yeah, I bet it was.
And I didn't even feel so guilty about not telling my parents that I was going because,
Hmm.
I didn't they were my friends and, like,
Yeah, hmm,
and even so, like, friendships outside of, like, maybe 2 were very forced. I started to realize, like, midway through high school, like, They were just fake people that in middle school I was close with, who was no longer the case in high school.
You mean
Um,
like people at church?
yes.
Yeah, okay. Mhm,
And so, like I said, I thought, life will be easier. I'll be happier at Walton with all of these church friends. And like the reason we've not been close is just because I live so far away.
mhm,
Um, and then I got there my senior year, and there are two people that spoke with me, and that like the friendship that we had at church was the same friendship at school. And then everybody else acted like they didn't know me. Like I was a piranha. Like, they did not do the love bomb that you do for people when they come to church.
mhm.
Like, it was they 2 people in particular were pretty popular, in the senior class, and just, like, that's all they cared about was their popularity. They were not going to, um, open anybody new welcome anybody new with open arms. So I hated it. I hated everything about it, and I didn't feel like I could be open and honest about it because
Mhm.
those are your sisters and brothers. And then I started to get really sick senior year, like, I was getting really bad migraines and throwing up and having all these, like, GI issues, like, I was going to all kinds of specialists to figure out what the heck was going on, and now in hindsight, looking at it, like, however many years later, I mean, it was, like, severe depression and anxiety over going to school, like, it was affecting me physically, um, so when I look back on my senior year, which is supposed to be, like, the best year of your school
Mhm.
life, and I hated it. I mean, like, me and a friend that were very close, one of the only ones that remained close with me, it came time to, like, talking about prom, and, like, a whole group of people from another school came to our prom, and they all got a limo together, and they left me and this other girl out of the limo plans and then told us, "Oh, you guys can follow the limo in the car." Like, you can ride and follow everybody together. I'm like, "So that's how it was." It was just there was no it was and then I'd show up at church, and they'd wanna be best friends. I'm like, "I don't." It's a lot. There's still a
Mhm.
lot of hurt, um, when I look back on that time. I mean, we were all kids, all trying to find our place, and I can't blame them for wanting to secure
Yeah.
a
Mhm,
friendship at school too, and not to be, outcast because we go to this crazy church that doesn't let you do anything. So I get it. They were trying to survive just like I was, but it was like it felt like a betrayal.
mhm. Of course it did, because I think for me, the hardest part about that is that this was not supposed to be the place that that happened.
Correct.
That's
And that
that's that
yeah,
mhm.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go
It's
ahead.
okay. I didn't wanna overspeak on what you were saying. But yeah, because this was supposed to be the place that you would feel connected, protected, a part of it.
Yep,
Um, and it wasn't. It was
correct.
just another place. And so I
What
think that was and that's what was so hard for me. Like I tell people like high school was a breeze. Like it was not, I mean, I was not super popular or anything, but I still had friends and I had this. Church was the hard part. Like the trying to feel accepted, I remember getting a Nike sweatshirt and feeling like, yes, I'm gonna be cool at church now.
yeah. Oh, yes, yeah. I
Yes.
can relate to
Mhm.
that for sure. Like,
Mhm.
having to fit a certain mold, like, you couldn't be different.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
couldn't be your own person. You had to be like everybody else. I think what stuck out to me too is, like, I was constantly told that my friends at my previous school at Sprayberry weren't real friends because we didn't go to the church, or
Mhm.
they didn't go to the church. Like, they weren't real. They were gonna hurt me as soon as I left the church, like, I mean, as soon as I left the school, they would be like, they wouldn't care, and that's not true. They checked in with me all senior year. Like, we still
Really?
well, I couldn't hang out with them. I think I hung out with them one other time, but then my parents kinda, like, locked that down.
Jeez.
Um, and yeah, and I felt like they were better friends than all with the exception
Mhm.
of, like, 2 people at the church at the high school that I went to. Um, they were better friends than any of them ever were, and
Yeah,
so I think
Mhm.
senior year is when I really started to realize, like, we are not living what we're preaching, or certain people aren't held to the same standards that everybody else is.
Hmm. Yeah, I think two things. One, the friend thing was something that the entire time I was at the church, I always struggled with. I always had friends outside of church and always got discipled because of that.
Yep.
Um, and like for instance, I don't know if I've shared this. This is if I haven't, God, this might be it's, I'm gonna share it anyway. I kissed my best friend's girlfriend in high school.
Oh, no.
Yes. It
Scandal.
was stupid. It was stupid. Fucked up the whole 9 yards. And for 2 weeks, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell him, and she didn't tell him or whatever. Then I finally came up to him and told him. And I was expecting as the worst because this is terrible. It's
Mhm.
terrible what I've done. And opposite happened. Like he was mad as he should have been. He said a lot of things, but he was like, "You told me, thank you. I appreciate your honesty, all that stuff." And he forgave me. And I was like, "Whoa." So I'm seeing forgiveness from people that aren't supposed to forgive me.
Yep.
They're telling me, but then I go to a place and then I'm receiving not forgiveness and being told I'm not good enough.
Not
It's
worthy.
weird. Yeah, it's weird, right?
But, ugh, it's
So,
hard to reconcile also, like,
mhm,
being made to feel that way, but then also, I mean, there were intermittent times, where, like, I was, like, fully fledged drinking the Kool-Aid and was telling
mhm.
other people's what we were supposed to tell them. Um, and it's hard to forgive myself for that.
Well, what made you want to drink the Kool-Aid? What made you want to like study the Bible and be a disciple and stay in it?
I think, like, the draw of the family that we were
Mhm.
supposedly coming into, like,
Yeah.
lifelong friends, and
Mhm.
also, like, I'm the oldest. We've got 3 younger sisters, and so I think part of being the oldest is wanting to please and wanting to do right, and, I saw my parents studying the Bible, and,
Mhm.
like, I felt like, of course I wanna be a Christian. Of course I wanna go to heaven, and if this is how I'm gonna go, like, yeah, I wanna do it. I wanna please God, I wanna please my family. I want I want this guaranteed set of, like, friends and family that are there for you thick and thin.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, and also I was freaking 13, like, what else am I gonna be doing? Like,
You got baptized at 13?
yeah, yeah,
Wow, overachiever.
yeah, yeah, sorry. So, I mean, it was just like, "Do you wanna study?" "Yeah, I wanna study," and just went through, and I'm already emotional anyway, so I feel like I gave the appropriate
You cried at all the right points that you were
reactions. I feel
supposed
like
to.
I did because I
Mhm.
s was v yeah. I probably definitely had, like, underlying mental illness from a young age, like, definitely I can
Mhm.
say for sure that I was depressed, but I didn't know how to communicate that I was depressed.
Mhm.
So, it wasn't hard for me to be emotional, but I really felt it, like, I felt the emotions. It wasn't like I felt like I had to put on this show, like, I was moved, and the tears came, unfortunately, very easy for me. Um, but I do remember, like, always having an issue with telling people that if you didn't go to our specific church that you're going to hell. Like, even from a very young age, I was like, "I mean, you're telling me that, like, my granny, who's, like,
Mhm.
old, is gonna go to hell if she doesn't join this church, like, when she lives in Podunk, Alabama, with no way to get anywhere, and you couldn't just, like, be at home and be a disciple, you had to go to everything and do
Mhm.
everything." It's like, so she has no way of getting to any church anywhere near her. She's lived in this house her whole entire life, and you're telling me that, like, because she's not a member, she's going to hell. Like, like, ick, ick, ick.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, from a young age, I had always had an issue with that. So, outside of that little hiccup,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
just moved along that, like, said,
Hmm.
of course, yeah, people that aren't disciples or don't go to our church are going to hell. Just moving past that, saying that because I had to. Um,
Hmm.
I was able to complete the studies, and my dad baptized me. One of the
Was it
hotels.
at church? Was it
Yeah,
church?
it was
Hmm.
during a church service, and, like, I was mortified because, like, when I went down the step, my heel rubbed the back of the step, so it sounded like a fart. And I was like, "Oh my god, people are gonna think I farted in front of everyone." It wasn't.
At
So
least your
anybody
knee
that
didn't
might
give
be
out.
listening and watched it, I did not fart. It was my heel on the step.
Oh my gosh, we can finally put that to rest. The whole
We can
did
settle
she
that
not
right
fart?
here and right
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, I'm not gonna say I was miserable the whole time I was there because I absolutely wasn't, but I always had, like, little doubts, specifically about
Mhm.
then if you don't go to church, da, 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 and the, like, and the thing with, like, the homosexuality, I'm like, I feel like people love each other and they take care of each other, they should be able to be in a relationship, like,
Mhm.
and I started to get, like, conflicted because, like, they'd use certain scriptures and then, like, ignore so many of other scriptures in the Bible. I'm like, "Why do we pick this one that we have a problem
Mhm.
with?" Like, why are you not, like, critically thinking about the Bible?
Yeah, we love to use the Bible to create stances and to harden our lines on things, you know?
Yeah, for sure, and, like I said, there were times when I would sit down in studies with other women and say the same bullshit to them that I had a problem with and remember hating myself,
Mhm.
like, sitting there talking to them, trying to, because you had to get them to verbalize. Like, you had to
Yeah.
lead
Mhm.
them to the conclusion that if you were not a disciple in, like, the ICOC, so it didn't matter if you called yourself a Christian and went to church somewhere else, if you were not an ICOC member, you were going to hell. And, like, to have to lead women, like, basically push them to that conclusion and then make them say it out loud,
Mhm.
like, ugh, it's that so, like, as an adult, there's things that I have a hard time forgiving myself for.
Mhm.
That's one of them, because I always knew that it was wrong, even from 13 when I was studying the Bible, but I knew better, and I still did what was expected of me instead of what was right. So, that's hard for me to
Something like
let go of.
this, something like this, as far-reaching as it was, as long as we were in it, all of us, no matter who you were, you don't get out of these things 100% clean.
Yeah,
Like, there's a part of all of us that perpetuated the cycle in the system,
yeah,
and I think that's something that that's, like, the hardest thing for me to reconcile with as well. I think a lot of people that are on here that were in it for as long as, if you're in it for 15, 20 years, if you drink the Kool-Aid, you're gonna do or say something that you regret, you know?
yeah, which still
And,
doesn't make it any easier looking back.
um, I
Such a
think I think what makes it easier for me is the understanding that, like, all of us were doing it, and it kinda helps if somebody, like, tries to shame me or something like that about this, because 'cause I'm like, I mean, we only knew what we knew at the time. Like, they did a really good job of making us feel that this was what needed to be said, and if you didn't say it, the only thing that awaits you is falling away, you're leaving the church, and you're gonna burn in hell, right?
That was a very real fear. 'Cause at
Yeah.
the time I started, like, questioning, was in campus, like, I started
Mhm.
having a really hard time in campus before the letter came out, just because 'cause
Mhm.
you're out from under the protection of your parents,
Mhm.
um, and then it's like you are so micromanaged and so controlled. Every aspect of your life, you have no control over, none, and so I really started to see that, um, but w you're isolated. Like you don't have an outside life. You don't have outside relationships. So what can you do about it? Right? Like that's how I
Of
felt. Like
course.
I just was like the world outside of the church terrified me. Because I was entirely sure
Yeah.
if I left, I would be alone
Mhm.
or like I would get married and get cheated on because that's all, like all
Yep.
men cheated. And, like that's how all marriages outside of the church ended was like with infidelity,
Hmm.
or I would be stabbed in the back by people that I called friends.
Hmm.
Like n-
So
not
of
even
course,
realizing that
yeah.
friends, people that were supposed to be my friends in the church were really
Mhm.
not friends. It was forced friendships.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I hope that like you and me and all these people, like we can remember like remember that it was like we were isolated. We were doing what we thought was right. And even if you were conflicted, we were taught to go against that. We were taught to not trust ourselves. We were taught to, this is the way, things like that. And so, like, I don't think that doesn't negate like real abuse and real trauma and real harm that people have done. But I think for me, it makes it easier to like reconcile with myself and to work towards forgiving of myself with that.
yeah. Some days I can be very mature about it and acknowledge all those points that you just made. And then there's other days that I'm just like down about everything, like my
Yeah.
experiences, like what was
Hmm.
done to me, what I did to other people, things that, and it haunts me
Hmm.
that I don't. So Karen, in one of your previous episodes,
Yeah.
mentioned things that were said to her um, by people in the church, and I am here to confess that I was the one that told her that her and Gerard wanted to get married just so they could have sex. And
Oh.
I didn't even remember saying this to her. She told me
Mhm.
this like years later after we were both out of the church. And like I was, and still am, mortified that I had the audacity to say something so hurtful and
Mhm.
hateful to one of my best friends. Um, and so, like, since I know that I have said really shitty things to people that I love and care about, and I didn't
Mhm.
remember it, and I just like it haunts me to think how many other people I hurt with
Mhm.
words. Like, and there was no good intention behind what I said to her. I was just being a bitch. Like, I was just saying
Yeah.
what we were taught. Like, but how did that help her? How did that? It
Mhm.
didn't. It was just the Kool-Aid, like drinking the Kool-Aid
Mhm.
and being all in it and just
Yeah.
like,
Mm.
so things like that are really hard. Even I've been out, what,
Mhm.
left 21 and I'm 42 now. So being out that long, I still have so much guilt and sorrow and embarrassment and shame
Mhm.
about things that I know that I said, and then like the unknown things that I
Mhm.
don't even remember. That's hard
Well,
for me.
yeah, it's hard for me, it's hard for everybody and I think there's a difference though. There's a difference between what you're saying versus someone who knew, like like the people that like the physical, sexual, mental abuse that people did to other people knowing that they were using a system to do this. Like that's a totally different thing. When I say like forgiveness of people and stuff like that, I
Yeah,
think those type of people, like things need to be done and said to them for them to come to justice.
yeah,
Because like we were just we were being used by people essentially
yes.
to
And
move
I
to
like,
move something forward.
so when I talk about like my experiences, I just was unaware of things going on that are now like in lawsuits. I had no idea. I fortunately was not subjected to any of that. And so like I feel really little sometimes. Like it's hard. I gaslight myself into saying my experience, well, it wasn't this bad because this didn't happen to me. Like I try and like minimize what I went through
Mhm.
and trauma, yes, there is trauma from experiences within the church. I try and minimize it, gaslight myself, which I think comes from the church because it was
Yeah.
bad as
Mhm.
somebody else's experience.
When I'm in my darkest place about all this, that is one of the major things that comes up to me, comes up in my head and my heart. Like, what do you have to cry about, really?
Yep.
You weren't this. Like, so what? It was just tough. Like, and I think it's hard, but there was this quote that uh Joe Rogan said it. Calm down, everybody. I'm saying Joe Rogan, chill out. He said that the worst thing that happened to you is the worst thing that happened to you. Like, you
Profound.
know, and like own
Absolutely.
that. Like you have to honor your pain and your trauma. It doesn't mean no matter the size. And the fact that we feel like we need to compare it, it's fucked up in itself,
It is.
you know. Um it's even weird, me talking and saying the word like we were in a cult, like I'm having this, like this this wasn't as bad. I mean, there's hundreds of cults that are out there that are doing way worse. And at
Yeah.
the same time, we're sitting here and I'm having conversation after conversation after conversation about people like, the depression, the issues that they've had, the struggles with being worth enough, like worthy of anything. Um, the crippling anxiety that comes from what we were in. Like we have to talk about that.
Yes. Yeah. I remember watching Leah Remini's Going Clear on HBO.
Mhm.
Did you ever watch that?
No, I haven't watched that one.
So it's about like her experience within Scientology. And
Oh
she's
yes.
very outspoken against it
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
And there were so many parallels, like not as
Mhm.
extreme. And see, this is where I was like, well, maybe I wasn't in a cult because he didn't like punish people by putting them in like shipping containers and like didn't believe in like an alien higher being and didn't we demanded tithing, but not like to the amount that like she had forked over to be a member of this church. But
Mhm.
there are still other considerable parallels. But I would be
Yeah.
like, so I was like, yeah, maybe I was in a cult, but like at least it wasn't this one, and like again,
Mhm.
gaslighting and minimizing our experiences or my experiences, I should say.
The more we do that, the harder it is for us to move on.
Yeah, I wrestle with the fear of never being fully moved on. Like I want to one day just to be able to say what it was and, like, not have any feeling attached to it. Like, yeah, I was a member of this cult and, like and then have nothing, like, just nothing. There be nothing, but there's always, like, shame and
Well,
guilt, always.
we talk about parallels. Um, we're always going to have this scar,
Mm,
and it's not going to necessarily go away. It's like grief.
mm,
My dad passed 5 years ago, and there's never not going to be a time now that I think about him and feel a little something. Now, it's been 5 years and I can think about him and I not, break down immediately and start crying and these things, but it's there. Like we were a part of something, and yes, it was what it was to us. And the longer we're away from it, if we can keep talking about it and working through it, yeah, there might be a twinge, but there could also be a thing of like, and we can look ahead now, you know?
yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard to move on.
I think for so long I completely ignored it, like, right when I
Hmm.
left. Like,
Yeah.
anything that was, like, my natural instinct not natural instinct, but maybe, like, instincts given by the church, like, my way of thinking because of the
Hmm.
teachings of the church, I rebelled against any of that, like,
Yeah.
when I
Hmm.
left. I mean, it was like I I didn't know how to cope because when you my experience was, yeah, when I was younger, like I
Hmm.
said, I definitely had depression, undiagnosed, because at the time, like, there wasn't a focus
Yeah.
on health and all of this, but there were definitely pretty obvious signs that, like,
Hmm.
there was something going on, And so whenever I would talk about, like, feeling this way or feeling shy or feeling insecure or feeling, like, just down and didn't know why, it was always turned back around that, like, "You're being selfish. This is sin. Like, you shouldn't be focused on you. You should be a servant and focus on giving to everybody around you." And
Mhm,
so, like, for so long, like, feelings of depression or now what I recognize as anxiety, which I did not realize I had that until I was 40 years old.
mhm,
Um, like, all of these feelings that if I ever talked about with somebody in power, like disciplers, friends, um, my parents, I didn't really share a lot of these feelings with all the time, but it was always turned back around on me. Like, "There's something wrong with you. You're not
mhm,
living right. You're not serving enough. You're thinking too much about yourself." So, unfortunately, those that doesn't lend to very good, like, coping mechanisms or very high
mhm.
self-confidence, and so, when the Henry Crete letter came out, I hung around, I guess, and when did that come out? What year was it? I can't remember.
2003.
Was it 2003?
Yeah, I'd been a part of the church, or I'd been I'd been baptized. I was baptized in 2000. So it was
Okay.
either 2001 or 2002 or 2003.
Okay, so I did not hang around very long after that then, and I don't
Mhm,
remember hanging around very long. I remember not immediately leaving, but when that letter came out, I felt like, "Here's my chance to escape." Like, that's literally how I remember, like, "I can get out now, I can escape now." But having been in the church since I was 13, I had no friends outside of the church, no true friend. I had, like, classmates that I took, like, nursing school classes with, but I did not have friendships outside, so that's what kept me, because I was terrified to go out into the real world,
mhm,
and not know anything or anybody. And then there was a sermon, I can't even remember tell you exactly what was said, but a certain minister at Georgia Tech went up there and said the same old bullshit. Like, I feel like the first few
mhm.
sermons after the letter were kinda tame, and then he just picked back up
Double
where I
down.
left off before the letter, and I was like,
Mhm,
"No," and I just had this realization, like, nothing is ever gonna change. This is not like, it's gonna be the same, and if I
mhm,
don't leave now, I'm never gonna get out. So I just told a couple of my close friends that I couldn't do it anymore, and they understood, like, no, the friendships that I knew that mattered, they loved me regardless, and those are
mhm.
the only ones I really bothered telling. Um, and so I left and went out in the real world and didn't I had, like, all this freedom that I had never had
Mhm,
before, but I also had no coping skills. So, and this is where I'm gonna start, like, to, edge into talking about self-harm, so for
mhm,
anybody that is easily triggered by that, just know that it's coming. Um, so I get out into the real world, I finished nursing school, which, by the way, while I was in the church and in nursing school, you couldn't I was told I was selfish for studying. Like,
mhm.
I couldn't prioritize school, I had to prioritize church, and I'm like, "Nursing school is freaking hard." Like, you go to
Yeah,
clinical, you have these, like, crazy ass tests that, like, break your brain. Like, it is a lot of work. You can't just, like, write a paper and, like, pass a class. Like, there is a lot of work involved, but my college roommates, we were the 6 pack and then the 4 pack for a little while, um,
mhm,
hosted multiple activities in our dorms during the week and then all of the outside church activities. So, I did well enough in nursing school during that time to, like, stay in nursing school. I wasn't kicked out, but I got, like, B's and C's. And then as soon as I left the church and could actually study, I was, like, a straight A student. So,
wow.
anyways, I don't know where I was going with that. So, I survived nursing school, got a job as an emergency room nurse, which you will see some, like, heavy shit doing that. So, like, we'd go out on the weekends. I made a couple of friends and, like, party, like, drink. And because I have social anxiety, I cannot be in around people. comfortably without alcohol. So that led to like binge drinking on the weekends. I wasn't a daily drinker, but I definitely had to have alcohol to feel at ease around people.
Mhm.
So like I'm drinking more than I need to be drinking, like blacking out, doing stupid shit that I shouldn't have been doing, but still was able to like work. Like it didn't affect work. I never like thank goodness, never went to work like drunk or anything. Like I saved the drinking for the days that I was off. I just couldn't have one drink and be okay. It was multiple drinks.
Mhm.
And then like when you get into the aspect of like dating when you leave the church, like I had attention from men and in the church they didn't have a lot of like high standards. It was like they went to the church and that's what you should go for, right? Like it was fine. And so when I got out into the real world, I didn't have things that I needed or wanted in a man. I just needed there to be physical attraction. So I got myself into some like abusive, verbally, slightly physically abusive relationships. And all of this is like progressing over a couple of years until one day I just like I had a fight with a boyfriend, was very drunk and went home and cut myself. And not out of like, I was not trying to unalive myself.
Mhm.
I don't even actually honestly remember everything that I was thinking in that moment. I kind of feel like I was obviously wasn't thinking,
Mhm.
but I just wanted to feel something. Like I was tired of like not being able to process trauma from the past and things that I saw at work and like this really shitty relationship that I had tied myself to, but felt like because like the whole goal in the church is like you eventually want to get married. Like that's a very big priority within the church. Like you should
Mhm.
want from a young age, you should want to be married young and have kids young and contribute to the church numbers that way. And then like your
Yeah.
family continues to reach out and bring other people in. So like I don't know. I didn't have coping mechanisms because I wasn't ever taught them, and everything that I ever felt was viewed as sin. So I broke. I had like a psychotic break and I cut myself and ended up like in a 2 or 3 day. I went voluntarily, but once you show up voluntarily with self-harm, they make you stay
Yeah.
involuntarily
Mhm.
until they deem you safe to leave. So that was like I would love to say that everything was better after that. It wasn't. But it was a
Mhm.
wake-up call for me as far as, slowly coming around to recognizing the need for healthy coping mechanisms and to not engage in such problematic behavior, which it did take me a few more years to get my shit together, um, but I just had to live life, you know? And I can't help but
Mhm.
wonder, had I been able to experience normal childhood experiences, normal dating relationships that,
Mhm.
like, high schooler would have, or be exposed to, like I'm not saying, like, let your kids be put in these dangerous positions and go to all these parties, but, like, had I experienced things growing up, like, that normal, quote, unquote, "normal people" get to experience, I wonder would I have broken like that, you
Mhm.
know? It's hard to when I sort through all my feelings of that time, it's really hard to not put a lot of blame on the church, which I can't totally, it's not fair because there's things about me that I didn't even realize until like, hindsight is 20/20, but I feel like mental health isn't protected in the church, like, it's
Oh.
actually your mental health and well-being is harmed in the church, and I definitely felt the effects of that as a twenty-something-year-old out there trying to find my place in this world that I always thought would, chew me up and spit me out. Um, Finding my place in it was hard for me. It was hard, and I obviously didn't handle it the best way, eh, for part of the time. I went complete opposite direction of the church's teachings
Mhm.
and learned a lot of lessons the hard way. Um, but I just wonder how much of that could have been avoided had they prioritized well-being,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to kids in the church.
Yeah. Um, uh, Thank you for sharing that. Um, I know that that's hard to open back up. It's got to be hard to open back up
Yeah.
about that. Yeah, we weren't taught. We Most churches outside of ours don't prioritize mental health in a way that anyone needs. It's all Bible, prayer, Bible, prayer. And, Bible prayer doesn't fix chemical stuff going on in your brain that's not working.
Yes.
Bible prayer doesn't help everything. Support is what helps. Being able to have the tools
Yep.
at that's what helps. Um, Listening without agendas, that's what helps.
Yep.
Um, we weren't given that and taught that.
No. And I only share that like private. I mean, I've made one post on Facebook about it before.
Mhm,
Um, after like Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain committed
mhm,
suicide, and everybody was like so shocked, and I'm like, I mean, this is why are you like money doesn't fix like like there's people that you wouldn't ever imagine that would do these things or have
mhm,
depression. So I kind of feel like for people listening to this that maybe might still be in it or haven't prioritized or not even known how to get help, like I am a-okay with if they want to reach out to you to connect with me. I'm fine. I'm like more than
mhm,
willing and happy to help. And even if you just want to talk and don't want to get professional help, but you want somebody to listen who's been through it, like I am here.
mhm.
Um, like, cause I really, when you approached me about coming on, I was like, I don't know how much more I have to contribute to what's already, been said. Like my story isn't special, again, gaslighting myself. But I feel like this was a very profound moment in my life when I self-harmed. And I know that a lot of it, like 1,000%, is a result of teachings of the church. And they don't teach you to self-harm. You get where I'm going with this, right? Like
I do.
that, like
I'm
everything
hearing
is,
what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to put into words exactly when
I
like
don't
I'm
think you need to
reliving all this.
apologize. You don't need to apologize or like try, I
Uh,
get what you're saying. The worst thing for a person, I feel like, is to feel like their story doesn't matter, right? Or their story isn't enough because that's when the door closes, like that's what closes your heart. That's what closes you off. And that stops the healing, right? Like I want, my hope is that I get to 1,000 of these because there were 1,000 Marissas, there were 1,000 Roys, there were 1,000 whoever that felt something of what you're feeling. Like, although maybe I haven't gone to the self-harm, I've done damaging things to myself to feel something other than what I'm feeling. I get it. I get the desire to want to feel anything other than all of this and to feel worth something,
yeah,
you know? And so in sharing, it allows someone else to go, "Oh yeah, nope, I get that. Yes, I get that." And so like, yeah, it's fucking powerful. All of our stories matter, big or small.
they do. It took me a long time to
Hmm. Yeah.
to realize that or accept it, I guess, for myself. Like I hear everybody else's stories and I'm like so moved and I'm like and I just have this like constant need to compare myself and
Mhm,
minimize myself to everybody else's stories.
mhm,
Um but then when you said "Why don't you do this so that we don't all feel so alone or so crazy for what we went through?" And I'm like, "Well, if this helps anybody, like just one person,
Mhm.
it'll be worth it to announce to the world,
Yeah.
like, my experience before, during,
Yeah.
after, all of it."
Yeah. I was talking with someone yesterday about this, and they were imagining, like, although right now it's just the two of us,
Mhm.
in like a couple of weeks, there's gonna be people in this, it's like in the space, right?
Yeah.
Listening. And that's like it's a wild thing. And I've thought about that more as I do this, and like it's needed. Like you have like I think the internet and social media and a lot of things has exacerbated that comparison and feeling like we're
Yes.
smaller. You know what I mean? Like
I think
because
you're right.
we're being given these curated things, and it the more we're on it, the more it makes us feel smaller and makes our stuff feel less than. Um, but I think the one thing that it doesn't, in honoring the pain and honoring this, is it doesn't minimize someone else's. It's not doing anything to their abuse, what they experienced. It's just honoring yours. And that's what needs to happen more, and
Agree.
allowing, oh, I mean, instead of, I say honor a lot, but it's more like just allowing the space for it to be there, you know?
Yeah, maybe I resonate more with that phrasing of it, like, just allowing it to
Yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
Hmm.
really know that it, like, like, again, because I think we talked before, like, neither one of us take compliments well, because like, it just
Hmm.
felt like you never really could in the church, that because you could never take, like, ownership of
Hmm.
success. It always had to
Yeah.
be due to your surroundings, to
Hmm.
God, to whatever, so you could never, like, honor yourself.
Hmm.
So, like, it's hard for me to want to, like, honor my story, but, like, give it space. I'm on board with that, even though it's technically the
Is it
same
just the
word.
word? Is it the semantics
Yeah,
of the
it's
fact that I'm
like
saying honor?
yes,
Yeah.
I feel like I get really caught up in semantics of
Hmm.
things now,
Yeah.
um, because
Yeah. I say honor because it's more specifically for like men and boys with regards to anger and their emotions.
okay,
I feel like in how men and boys are treated with their emotions, like we're taught that like anger is wrong. And so I think that we need to honor anger for what it is and allow the anger to be there sometimes.
for sure.
Um, because if we allow the anger to be there, it kind of dissipates quicker. But what happens, this is my experience and what I've in the readings and research I've done, like teachers, I saw this when I was a teacher, how teachers would treat boys when they would get angry, and it was this, we have to stop it now.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're not honoring the anger and honoring their feelings. And so I don't mean to make it good, I get what you're saying with semantics, but I was just, that's why I say honor it, you
I
know.
know, I appreciate that. I do.
Cool. All
It's
right.
just for me, myself, and I accepting, like, an honor
Mhm.
doesn't
Yeah.
I have a hard time with it.
Yeah, I've listened to a couple people talk about the self-harm and the cutting. There was a kid that I knew that did that, and they would explain why they would do that and how it would like when they were cutting themselves, it's like everything kind of got quiet, and it was like something. And I remember feeling like, because I have a number of this is comes off right. I have a number of tattoos,
Uh-huh.
like big ones,
Yeah.
and I can remember, especially on my chest, when the needle is on my chest repeatedly for like 30, 40 minutes. It was like all I could think about was the pain and what it was doing, and I couldn't think about anything else.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the few times where my mind is really quiet, kind of
I
thing.
yeah, I don't think I've ever, like, fully sat down and processed in that moment. what was
Mhm,
going on, but now that you're describing it like that, I mean, that's pretty damn accurate. Like,
mhm,
before everything is loud and angry and
mhm,
scared and sad and, like, confused and, like, desperate, I guess, and
mhm,
it's like this dark, loud cloud, and then
mhm.
in that moment, I just wanted release from all of that, and
Yeah.
it sounds terrible to say release because I was not trying
Mhm,
to end everything. I just needed, like, something so that I wasn't feeling what I was feeling mentally, and it
yeah.
did. Went very
Mhm,
quiet after that, and then I don't remember a lot. I know I, like, was on the phone with my sister. I called her and let her know what I had done, and I had a lot
mhm,
to drink, and plus in the middle of, like, a mental breakdown. It was
yeah.
making a little bit of sense, enough to scare the shit out of them, and, like, my parents came and picked me up and took me and, like, asked if I would go, and I willingly went because I recognized that I was not okay.
Mhm,
But, like, it didn't the self-harm did not end after, um, that one instance. I mean, there
mhm.
was, like, probably 2 more times, and it was always out of anger, or
Yeah.
frustrations or following a fight with the toxic boyfriend at the time. And it wasn't even attention seeking because I never even told anybody that I did it again. Like, you could just see,
Mhm,
I cut down the back of my leg another time, and like I said, none of it was deep, none of it required stitches. It was just, like, an act of, I don't know, desperation, wanting release. It's hard to really think what I wanted in that time, and then immediate, like, regret and shame, like, "Marissa, what are
mhm.
you like, this is not helping you, this is not helping anything, like, get your
Yeah.
life together." And so, like, baby step by baby step, like,
Mhm,
started to take steps to change. I did not do like, it wasn't like a 180 and all of a sudden I was better. It was really
mhm,
hard to get mental health even after being hospitalized. Like, medications prescribed are way too expensive. And then, like, it was really hard to find a therapist that was not religion based in the
mhm.
South. Um, so I can definitely resonate with what you were saying about, like, how everything got quiet because in that moment it did, but it doesn't stay quiet. And so I feel like I'm fortunate
Yeah. Mhm,
I've gotten out of that without it continuing to be, like, a years long, um, habit that happened. I mean, like, the
mhm.
next 2 times were within a very short time frame. Um, yeah, and, like, I actually have a big tattoo on my forearm that covers those scars because I was sick of looking down at that arm and, like, seeing those scars and thinking about that time, like, I when I
Mhm.
was much better off, I was like, "I just don't wanna be reminded of that on every day," so that's why I got my tattoo to cover it so that I would
Yeah.
think about better things than that, but
Well, I'm glad that you're on the other side of it. I mean, it's it's an easy road for someone to say they don't understand how someone can do that. Um, and but I understand, like, for me, I found aggressive, loud music and aggressive concerts. And for me, that was how I got the anger out. Like, I go in the middle of the pit. And
yeah,
if I'm fighting for my position, it's like for 2 hours in the front and I'm being knocked to hell in all directions, and I'm pushing, and I'm getting the aggressive, loud vibrations from the songs and the artist, coupled with the fighting for my space in this venue. Like, I leave like light.
wow,
Like, that's my yeah, that's my release, because I need because because we get all of this anger and this hurt, and it just builds up in us, and there's nowhere for it to go, right?
nowhere.
Sometimes.
Yep,
And so, like, I just got lucky in the fact that I found heavy metal and then really heavy hardcore music. And I can put it if I'm not going to a concert, I can put it in my ears
Yeah.
and let that watch over me, and calm myself down and then get beat to hell at a concert and then I'm better.
Feel
Or
like feel better.
oh, I feel so much better. It's like, I get into the space at these concerts and I mean people can laugh at it all they want, but like I'm having a hard time breathing. I'm soaked in sweat. I've been elbowed in the face. I've been kicked. I've been punched, and I'm doing that to other people in a space that like it's quote unquote safe
Mhm.
because no one necessarily wants anyone to get hurt, but you know that you could.
Yep.
But like feeling it's like fighting for breath, fighting for all of that. I mean, fuck. It's exhilarating to leave and to it's like all of the anger goes away. All of it's done and it's quiet again.
That's fascinating to me.
Mhm,
'Cause, like, we all like, that would stress me because I'm like, I have a like, loud noises, no thank you, like,
mhm,
crowds, hell no, like, that causes me stress, but, like, we're each different
mhm,
in process grief and release and trauma, like, everybody is different in their responses to life events, and I feel like where the church fails us is, like, you try to put everybody into one mold, like,
mhm. Yeah.
only in how you expect them to look and act, but, like, how you expect them to, like, go through life and experience things, and that's just not how humans that's not how we're built, that's not how life should be, like, where you can't
Mhm.
like, that your release would cause me trauma and stress, and I'm sure, obviously, like, cutting myself would probably cause you trauma and
Right.
stress, but that's the beauty in it all, like, we're, like, different people, and the church just doesn't recognize that, it's like you have to
Yeah.
be
Mhm,
one way, and if you're not, then you're wrong and you're going to hell. So when you leave the church and you're out in the real world, it's really hard, especially when you've been taught those things since like when your brain is doing personality development and like some of the like the biggest times of growth and development, like and you're in this cult for those formidable years. It's really freaking scary when you go out it on your own
mhm,
and like you can't really blame people for maybe not like integrating into the real world like, very easily.
mhm. Oh, yeah, it's weird to, like it's like, the things that we did on a normal day in the church is not at all
No,
how people live their life.
no.
Even, like, with the amount of time that we'd be in other people's houses,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like,
Yeah.
nobody does that.
Nope.
Like, it's weird to like, people tell me all the time, it's like, "It's weird how you are with just inviting everyone in your home and just being this way and, like, wanting, like" 'cause I love the idea of having a community, um, because, like, I felt some sense of community, and I want it, so, like, I reach out to people, and
Yep.
people don't do that, you know? So
Mm,
it sometimes it takes people who are just like, "Whoa, what are you trying to sell me?" But I
mm.
think but I think it's because people were did that, we did that to people, tried to sell them and get them into the church.
Oh, yes, we did.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
I
So
remember oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, what'd you remember? Tell me.
Oh, like, well, just as I mentioned, being very shy,
Mhm,
like, social anxiety, not good with people that I don't know from a very young age. Um, so the sharing your faith thing that we had to do was always I hated it. I hated it with every breath in my body, like, I would get upset stomach, nauseous, like,
mhm,
all of the physical symptoms of anxiety I would get whenever we had to do it, and I remember one time I don't remember if I must have been, like, early campus. I was at the mall with my discipler, and I saw girls from my first high school from Sprayberry who bullied me for being a goody two-shoe, and, like and that was the thing too, I remember now that I'm saying this out loud, is a lot of my friends that I had had, like, in elementary school and middle school, and then when we get to high school, and I'm in the church, but I'm at the school by myself, a lot of them were like, "Well, you think you're too good for us now." That's how because I couldn't hang out with and do the things and associate myself with people that kids I had grown up with my whole life. All of a
yeah,
sudden, I
mhm,
turned my back on them. So I was bullied by a couple of girls pretty heavily. Um, and it all goes back to that, the boy that I had a crush on that my parents, like, squashed that, like,
Mhm.
these one of these girls had a crush on him too, and so it was like, that was the reason for the bullying, and then when my parents stepped in, it was like, "Oh, your mommy and daddy had to, like," it was just a whole thing, whatever. So we in campus, I saw these 2 girls at the mall when I was out with my discipler, and she was like, "Go share your faith with them." And I was like, "No,
Oh.
no." Like, I told her no. I was like, I cannot do that. They bullied me at school." I was like crying, like crying because she was forcing me to do it. And then she was like, "Well, then you come with me." So I had to walk with her while she went up and shared her faith, with these 2 girls, and, like, they gave her number, which I was surprised at, and they were, like, nice to my face, and so I was like, "Well, that's weird, maybe they'll end up coming, and then how am I gonna handle that when they show up at church when they caused me so much, like, stress at
Mhm.
school?" And then I guess they just gave the number to get out of the situation, but when my discipler called them to get them, details for church and things like that, they were totally making fun of her and just exactly how they were in high school. I guess they hadn't matured.
Wow.
But
No,
it was
was it
like
your discipler or was it your
trauma.
teen worker?
It was a discipler.
Okay. So it was a teenager, right? Or
She was in well, so this was, like, my freshman year in campus, so it was,
oh,
like a
okay.
discipler
Yeah.
to this ministry. But it was just, like, trauma. That was trauma. I'm
Mhm.
like, why would you like, already somebody who doesn't like to share their faith, which I always said, I hate this word. I struggle with this,
Mhm.
getting people to come because I don't know how to I'm so awkward. Like, I don't know how to
Yeah.
talk to people in social situations. Like, I don't. Even to
Yeah.
this day, I am awkward, and I fully
Mhm.
embrace that. Like, my awkwardness. It is what it is. I'm sorry. I try and do better for my girls, but I see, like, my our middle child, and I'm like, "Oh, girl, you're just like me. We're gonna have to help you." Anyways, yeah, so it's like, you know, I'm crying in front of the discipler, like, "Please don't
Yeah.
do this. We can share with anybody else." I even said, I was like, "I will talk to anybody else in this mall. Do not make me talk to them." And and she wasn't normally very pushy, and, like, I had a great relationship with her, and I have nothing bad to say about that relationship. I just think, like, she missed the mark on that specific situation. Like, and I don't think that I could look at somebody and see them being so uncomfortable that they're crying and forcing them into that, like, further into that discomfort. It's just but it happens all the time, like, it and
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's
There
just
was a sense of like, we have to push you to that point because on the other side is where the growth is going to happen. Like that's kind of the how
yeah,
it was
I do.
worked.
I do
Like
see that.
the only way to really grow is to be broken.
Yeah.
And the only way to like conquer your fear. And in some levels, yeah, if you're afraid of spiders and want to get over it, you need to be around some spiders,
Yeah.
right? But this is not what that is. Like there is no reason for that, you know?
You as the person with the fear have to be ready to conquer that
You
fear.
have to be ready to
You can't be
conquer. And if
forced.
someone's like, "No, I'm not ready," well, that's fine. Whatever. Let's walk the other way, you
Yeah.
know?
And it's
I I just remember like because I my worst was it was in a Kmart and I was with a teen worker and he was like, trying to get me to share my faith and just walking around and I just stumbled. Luckily, I was able to do it once and I stumbled through something, whatever, and then we moved on. But I don't know if you felt this, but I remember the feeling of when I brought someone to church, how that felt.
oh, yeah.
Like I remember in the teens, I brought a friend to the cool teen group. And I remember the teen worker and all these people just being so proud of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, yes, I've done it. I've done it.
I can definitely relate to that. Or, like, I think for me too, like, I especially started noticing this, like, senior year of high school, and then once I got into campus was that, like,
Mhm.
"Okay, you're telling us to do ABC, share our faith, be dedicated." I'm, like, going to all the services, I am sharing my faith, I'm talking I might not, like, do the blind sharing where you just go up to
Yeah.
strangers, but, like, I talk about church to classmates, so, like, get a couple people
Mhm.
to come with me, so I'm doing what you're telling me I'm supposed to do, yet I'm not being brought up, like, into leadership. Because I don't know if you guys felt like this too, but, like, it was always like, "You should strive to be a leader." Like, how many of our
Mhm.
sermons and devotionals were talking about being leaders? I'm like, that's
Mhm.
always the goal, to be chosen to go, like, on, hope trips or to, like, be a discipler, or, like, you just should advance and want to be at the top, but you have to do these things to get there, but it like, this if you didn't look a certain way,
Mhm.
or specifically with, like, our age, have parents that were high up in the church, like, you could do everything right, and it didn't fucking matter. Like, you were gonna stay put where you were because that's where you
Yeah.
deserve to be.
You
Like,
were gonna get worked to the bone.
yep,
Mhm.
yep, and,
Yeah.
like, friends that may have looked a certain way or had, like, a certain economic standing within the church, like, they weren't held to the same
Mhm.
standards. Like, they could mess up, they could sin, they could walk away and come back and be welcomed with open arms and, like, right back up to the top,
Yep,
and, like,
100%.
that, I think, was one of the things, like, that I really that so that was hard. I love I'm not trying to what I'm about to go into now, like, ruffle any feathers or hurt any feelings, but, um, my roommate situation in college was very much like, I lived what I just spoke about with roommates. Like, there was
Mhm.
a division between the roommates of some roommates who were, uh, elevated and
Yep.
didn't necessarily live that life.
They were
Um,
sharp, huh?
yep, and then I did not fall in that category, but I still had better opportunities than other college students. Because 'cause I'm not saying I was, like, left in the dust or, like, neglected or anything like that. Like, I wanted to do right. I tried to, like, live the life that we were told we should be living, and then just kept getting overlooked for things time and, like, time again. So, I feel guilt saying these things because, like, I don't know, I feel like when, like, you force these friendships and say, like, these are your best friends, these are your family, and then they're not, like, there's gonna be a lot of heartache in that, but, like, in the real world, you don't have forced friendships. Like, if I don't wanna be your friend, I don't have to be your friend, and then it doesn't have I don't have to feel guilt about
Mhm.
that. I don't want anybody hearing this to feel any type of guilt, because no, I it's more in how, like, leadership fostered these relationships and
It's
elevated.
the system that you're mad about, not specifically that
Yes.
the type of people. Mhm.
Thank you. Yes, that's where I'm
Mhm.
going with this. That's all I'm like, I don't have any ill
Yeah.
will towards
They
anybody.
were we were all a product of something, and they were living in that system
Yes.
per se.
Yes. And I
So, mhm.
definitely, like I said, I know I was like, I benefited at times from that system as well. Um, but I just felt like I was living a double life, even like living how the church wanted me to. Like, it just wasn't adding up. Like, I'm doing everything you want me to do, but I'm not being given these opportunities that you say I should strive for. Like, it was just insane to me, and then the whole
Mhm.
thing, like, I'm in college to become a nurse, like, this is what I wanna do with my life, and you're telling me that I'm selfish for studying. Like, w what? Like, how does that
Mhm.
even how do I don't know, but, like, so I feel like that was hard to come to terms with,
Mhm.
is expectations and reality did not match up.
I hated being forced to talk to people. I hated being forced to, like, a discipler. If this might be a little bit funny. The thing I hated the most was the amount of greeters at church.
"Oh, I was one of them, you hated me."
Well, because here's the thing, there was a greeter every 15 feet.
There was, yeah.
Like and so, like, you have a guy and a girl, and, like, I'm uncomfortable, talking to people I don't wanna talk to, and then
Mhm.
I'm forced to talk and
Mm, yeah.
couldn't get away and so, like, here it's like and I have to hug. That was also the thing, I have to
Uh,
hug. If I didn't hug, then something was wrong, and that's what frustrated me because I hate side hugs. I've always have. Like, I love to hug. If I'm gonna hug somebody over a high five, it's nice. A hug is great, right?
Yeah.
But there's people I don't wanna hug and I don't wanna talk to, and I'm not gonna side hug because 'cause we're both uncomfortable side hugging because it's silly.
Yes, it is, you're right.
It's a silly fricking thing, and so we were forced to talk to people for 2 minutes, and then you go 15 more feet, and there's someone else 15 more feet. There were people at the top of the escalators, there were people at the bottom of the escalators, there were people right at the doors.
Uh,
It took you fucking 30 minutes to walk in from a lobby, and I hated that. Sorry, I was just writing about that recently, so it's fresh on the heart, but, like, you were forced to talk to all these people.
I never even, like, connected those dots, like,
Oh god, yeah,
that
and I'm
like, you couldn't
tired.
just walk in, like, you had to talk, like, it was
No.
just expected.
I became a like, I was my goal whenever I found out where church was, I mean, it was always really the same places. When I found I would, um my mind's going really fast and my mouth's not working as well.
Yeah.
I would find where am I gonna interact with the least amount of people before I'm in there?
You stopped, did you really?
Uh-huh, I did. And I also was like, how late can I show up before I'm not late at church and I won't have to greet people or, like, interact with people?
See, I was like I cherished the greeter
Oh, yeah?
role because that's, like, all I was given, and I was like, "Alright, well, I'm gonna make the best of this," like and then
Yeah.
also, it's like, whenever you had a crush, they would kinda, like, try and pair
Mhm.
you and your crush up together, so it was, like, extra time to talk and be
Weasel
around each
time.
other.
A
Yeah,
little
weasel
weasel
time.
time.
Yeah.
Um, you wanna know the funny part too is that I became the lead usher, and then I remember because it was after, it was the first so I became usher because the first I got a suit for Christmas and I wore it to church for the first time, and then that's when all of a sudden people are like, "Oh, yeah, Roy has value. Here we go. Here's a job for Roy. He can finally do something." I became an usher, and then the guy, like, the lead usher, he left the church, and so they were like, "Roy, do you wanna do it?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I'll do it." Like, all of my friends that I interacted with, I'll tell you the names off of it, we all became the ushers, and then I would only put 2 greeters, so it was, like, le it wasn't as bad.
Oh, bless you.
But it was also, like, after the letter, so things were a little bit loose, so it wasn't as intense, but yeah.
That letter, man,
Yeah.
it's like an awakening. For
Mhm.
me, it
It
was.
was. I think
It's like my ticket out of there.
that's this one of the most disappointing things, though, because of the letter was, because everyone had hope that something was gonna change, and then it didn't.
I did. I really did. Like, part of me was, like, so excited, like,
Uh-huh.
"Alright, Marissa, this is your chance to go." Like, this church is not
Mhm.
perfect, obviously, they have fucked up majorly, and you can get out now, you can go. But
Mhm.
like I said, I didn't have anybody to go out to, and I was terrified, so I stayed
Mhm.
put, and I had hope, a great hope that it would change, and I remember having talks with a couple of my roommates, we all shared the same hope, um, so we were all feeling the
Mhm.
same thing, so that made me feel good, like, that we were all on the same page, and then, like I said, I just remember I can't even tell you what Kevin said in his sermon, but he said something, and I was like, I this is it. I will
Mhm.
not come back." And it's terrible that I can't even remember what it was, but I just remember being like, I gotta go. If I don't, I won't
Mhm.
ever leave."
Well, I'm, proud of you for leaving when you did. Like I said, it took me 8 years to have the balls to leave, you know? You jumped out into the unknown. Like, that's that's fucking brave.
I just remember, like, the sheer terror and
Yeah.
mourning. I was mourning friendships because I think I was the first one of, like, our roommates to leave. Um,
Mhm.
a couple of girls I was very close with, and I felt like I was mourning the loss because I just assumed that those friendships would be lost because from what
Yeah.
I heard
Mhm.
in the sermons, things were not gonna change, and you were still only gonna be allowed to be friends with people in the church, and I couldn't stay. I couldn't, and, I think it helped that, like, on my family side, like, my younger sister had already left, my mom had left, the twins. one of them got baptized, like, right before the letter came out, and so it wasn't hard for her to walk away. I think my dad was, like, the last one standing of us, but so it helped me that I had family that I would like, was close to that I could, um, lean on
Mhm.
during that
Good.
time. So I ended up actually moving back home with my parents, for my last year of college, um, in so I wasn't completely alone. Like, I had a safe place to go
Good.
where we
It's
weren't
awesome.
living in the church life anymore. We were definitely all trying to sort out
Mhm.
feelings and there was a lot of anger, um,
Mhm.
a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and I am a daddy's girl at heart, and so I my dad never made me feel like I was disappointing him ever, but I felt like I was disappointing him because when I left the church, I know you asked this of all your visitors, like, "How do you view God now?" I was like, "There is not one. I
Mhm.
don't believe in him. I don't ever wanna go to church again. I don't wanna read the Bible ever again." I immediately threw all of my journals away, like, from, you gotta take notes during the sermon so you're not a real disciple. Like,
Mhm.
all of them, threw them all away, all in the trash. Didn't wanna have anything to do with them, didn't ever wanna look back on them and reminisce. I wanted nothing to do with that time.
Yes, I set mine on fire.
I thought about it.
Mhm.
Um, now I'm like, I would like to read them to see how delusional I was.
I
Um
tried. Yeah, oh, anyway,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. My therapist was like, "Would that really be helpful for you right now?" And I'm like, "No, it probably wouldn't. It would
Mhm.
just increase my shame." Um, so I was very fortunate in the fact that I had family.
Yeah, it's
And
awesome.
then, like, friendships that I thought were lost were not.
Mhm.
A lot of them were, um, but the ones that I felt like we really gave each other our all throughout the whole time, um, like, those friendships have remained. And I remain so whenever I talk, like, poorly about the church, a lot of me feels, like, guilty too because I'm like, I have these lifelong friends, but we're survivors together, I guess I
I
could
mean,
say.
my yeah.
The good did come from it. I was protected from a lot. Um,
Mhm.
I can't say it was all terrible because it wasn't. In
Mhm.
the swamp, like everybody talks about, I mean, you you I wouldn't I would never want to not have that experience of the swamp, and even, like, if I had to do my life all over again, like, to get to where I'm at now, if I still had to go through all that bullshit, I would, because
Mhm.
I'm at a place in my life where I I'm very happy,
Mhm.
like, working on myself, but I feel good about myself. I love myself for the first time in I don't know how long. Like, I have
Heck
an
yeah.
amazing husband
Mhm.
and, like, 3 beautiful daughters that, like, they are my
Yeah.
for everything, so and great friendships from the church. Mm.
Yeah.
Maybe not as many as, like, you were expecting to have, when you're in the middle of it, like this lifelong family, but
Uh-huh.
I don't care. Like, I cherish the ones that I have. Um, so I would go through it all again to end up right back where I'm at, hands down. So,
Mhm.
I don't know what that says about me.
No, I think it
But, like,
says
willingly put
yeah.
myself through that again.
Well, I think we're at a place where we can look at things with a wider lens, right?
That is Yep.
Like, I think that, like, saying that there were these positive things doesn't negate the negative things, right? They still happen, and it's still things that need to be addressed. But yeah, like my 5 best friends, the guys that were in my wedding, were all members of the church. Even though I married, quote unquote Jezebel. Sorry. Sorry that I said that.
She's
But
gonna hurt
yeah,
you.
what?
So she's gonna hurt you for that one.
No, she's fine. I've referred to her like that before, in jest and in fun because it was anyway. But yeah, like they were at the wedding. And 2 of them 3 of them were still kinda members of one of the churches, but they still came to my wedding, were a part of it. They've always supported me, they've always loved me. I mean, my leaving was a slow burn, so, like, I got to see, like, who was gonna be there, who was not gonna be there kinda thing, and I would have these weird conversations about stuff, and then I wouldn't hear from those people again, but these guys that are there that stayed were there, and, like, the reason that I became a teacher was because of my experience at the swamp. Um, and being seeing how adult positive adult males in kids' lives outside of family, how powerful that is. So I wanted to do that. Couldn't have done it without the church. Still doesn't negate like the shame and the guilt and the trauma and all that stuff that I deal with, but
I think like now that we're saying these things out loud, like it,
mhm,
you know, the good doesn't negate the bad. I think
mhm,
that also, that way of thinking for me personally goes back to the teachings of the church too, because you are like, there is like a running list of all your fuck ups, and they are not forgotten and they are not
mhm.
forgiven. Like,
No, I know, yeah.
it's just like it's a constant reminder. You just can't move past things. And it's like
Mhm.
perfection is the standard. And that's just not like, people are gonna make mistakes. And it doesn't mean that they're gonna burn in hell for making mistakes, like there's no grace, which is like a
Yeah.
big theme
Mhm.
in the Bible. But
Yeah.
we were
Mhm.
never afforded that. And so I'd
Nope.
still, like, at 42 years old, carry over this way of thinking, like, I keep record of all my wrongs. I hold on to them because that's, I guess, like I said, during those formidable years, that's what happened. Like positions of authority that you look to for guidance and how to live and all of these things, and they hold everything against you. They hold it
Mhm.
all. Like, you're supposed to, like, be done with it in the sin study, but then what, I mean, you have disciplers and you're confessing your sins to them all the time, and it's just like you can't just be.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you can learn to just be.
Trying. I hold
Yeah.
myself to, like, very, very high standards.
Mhm.
I do not forgive myself easily. I am very
Mhm.
quick to forgive everybody else, but when it comes to me, myself, and I, like, no.
Yeah.
I,
Mhm.
I don't, and
Well,
I
welcome to the club. I do
Thanks,
the same thing.
thanks.
I I have to tell myself every day that nobody's watching. Like,
Oh,
nobody's watching me. Like, no,
that
I don't have to confess anything anymore. Like, these expectations, all this shit that I feel like I have to say and do, it's not real. It's not real. Like, you know?
do you feel like you overshare?
Sometimes.
Oh, I do.
I mean, I've got 97 episodes of me sharing my life. I've said a lot of things.
Like, yeah, in general, in social situations, I'll look back and it's part of that, like, awkwardness too, but it's also,
Mhm,
like, I feel like people are entitled to
mhm.
know everything about me, and they're
Yeah.
not. They don't want to, and so it's like,
No, they don't.
I wonder how many of us do that just because we always had to, like,
That's interesting to think about.
nothing was private, nothing was personal.
Yeah.
Everybody, and it never stayed with just a discipler. Everybody heard about all the bullshit. Like, I'll never forget the roommates. There was, like, a household argument that wasn't even an argument. Like, it might have been like a little argument, but somebody blew it way out of proportion, made it into like sermons. It was about how we were loading the freaking dishwasher. Like, everything was so micromanaged,
Really?
and everybody knew everything about everyone. Like, and so now it's like it's
Mhm.
really hard for me to not overshare. Like, I
Yeah,
need, like, I probably
I
overshare with kids too. That's a whole 'nother thing.
I tell people all sorts of stuff, like doctor's appointments. "Oh, yeah, this is what I was doing, this is what I'm doing," and they're like, "What?" I can see, like, why that's weird that you're saying this. I'll just be like, because it's like, to me, it's not like it's just whatever, it's not anything, like, gross or terrible. I'll just tell people, like, "Oh, yeah, this doctor's appointment, I gotta do this," or "This is what's wrong with me," and da 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 da,
Or
you
not,
know?
I feel like I have to justify everything. Like,
Yeah.
there has to be sound reasoning for it. I can't just say yes or no. I can't commit or not commit.
Mhm.
I have to tell you why. I have to tell you everything.
Yep.
And
We can't say no.
I
Can't say
cannot say
no.
no. I have really,
Yeah.
so that was like it, reasons for staying in terrible relationships too. Is like, I didn't feel like I could say no. Now it's one of my favorite things to say. I think when I had
I
kids, I
bet.
was like, there is power in the word
Mhm.
no.
I mean,
Uh,
you couldn't say no to dates. You
yep,
had to go on all of our dates.
I did. And
I
I remember
know.
times when I said no, and it was like, oh my gosh, well, you're never going to get another one, which I didn't get like a
And
ton of them
here's
anyway. So
hmm I got told no a lot though. That's why it's so shocking to me.
you got told no a lot?
I got told no a number of times. Mhm.
No.
It was either I think some of it might have been they just said I already had it, they might have already had a date, but like some of the times I was like, that's weird because it's 15 minutes after church. Like you already have a date now? Come
Oh,
on. Really?
yeah. There was one in particular that I started saying no to because he was really the only one like that was
Hmm.
pursuing, and I didn't want to be pursued. I it just wasn't there for me, and I felt like people were trying to push it, but I was like, "No," and I didn't I didn't care, I said no. I
Good for
just took
you.
I just took whatever was said to me because I just couldn't imagine
Hmm.
being in a relationship with somebody just because other people wanted it to be so. With me, like,
Yeah.
my
Hmm.
feelings having no say in the matter. And so, I mean, there was a lot, like, where I did take Saturdays to study and was like, "No, I have to study," and that was probably the safest I felt saying no was
Hmm.
being on Saturdays. Um, but yeah, I just remember being not interested, like great friends, but not interested. And I just had to start telling the poor guy, like, I don't, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
don't want, or like awkwardly leave. Like I could tell, you
Mhm.
guys get the look when you're coming over, like we know what's going to happen. And I
Because
would
it
be
was
like,
a cattle
I have
call
to.
as soon as yeah, you had to have the sister. So I hate the word pursue. I hate how that puts you guys. It becomes a predator prey situation that really fucks with my head. That
Yeah,
idea that I'm pursuing someone,
yeah,
like that's what I think about. But like Sundays would happen. I've said this numerous times, and you had to know where your sister was that you were going to take out so that you could beeline to her before another brother would come in and swoop in.
yeah, yeah.
And there were numerous times that I would be like ready to go, and then all of a sudden the brother would be right there, and I'd just be like, because then you had to think who else is there, and then that's more time on the clock that you're losing out because these brothers got to take out the sisters, or else y'all are going to be wooed by some
It's
man out into the
so
world.
exciting. And then you think that's how it is in the real world. Like
I
when you get out
know.
there, and then not that you're not pursued because you are, but
Hmm.
it's just it's different. Like
It
I,
is.
I don't know. It's so I
Hmm.
dating outside of the church at first was just a shit show. I mean, like
Yeah.
I remember just being like, "Oh, guys like are interested in me," because I wasn't aware of very many at all people having crushes or pursuing or anything. And so I just thought something was wrong with me. Like I didn't,
Yeah.
because I
Hmm.
also like people like we mentioned before who don't live what we're preaching, but then they're brought into positions of leadership or they're allowed to date. Mm, and then like others of it, it's just weird. It's weird. There's a whole big world out there. And so when I got out there in that whole
Yeah.
big world and was like receiving attention, I liked it. But at the same time, here I am getting this attention, but I also have a very hard time saying no
Hmm.
because while I did it occasionally in campus, like it still wasn't something I was comfortable with. And so I said yes in a lot of situations and to a lot of things that I shouldn't have, like, and knew that I didn't want to, but I felt like I had to. So that really messes with you when you leave and you go out there. In
Hmm.
hindsight, like, oh my God, Marissa, I'm like, you had no standards. You're just like, you just
Well,
so much that you didn't
mhm.
need to. And yeah.
I I felt that like on the flip side of that, like the way that I was treating girls in the beginning, like in the world, like I would call and I was respectful and I was all of these things.
Mhm,
And I saw the power in that. And I was like, whoa,
mhm,
I can, this is intense. Luckily, I met my wife before, like, because it was only like 3 months or a month or so after I like kind of can't remember technically, but I met her, and then that was kind of it's been all she's wrote. And I've been kind of like, that's really great because I could have I saw maybe it was like where it was I was headed, and that was probably dangerous
Yeah, yeah,
because
lots of regrets for that too for
mhm,
me.
is I found how it was like I was manipulating, and I could see myself using these things I was taught in church with the women that I was in front of, and I was like, well, okay, yeah. So I'm glad that I met my wife when I did, and I was able to kind of like, you know, work
Had
through it.
you not just said that, I don't think I would have connected that as like a manipulation. Do you know what I
What do you
mean?
mean? Really? Hmm.
Like talking to women a certain way, doing certain things
Hmm.
to make them feel a certain way, but it's just like not because you actually like I might be misunderstanding what you're saying, but not actually because you like cared and you wanted to do those things, but because you wanted them to go out with you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like
Hmm.
you wanted a certain reaction from them. It
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily sincere
Nope.
doing it.
Wasn't sincere. It was the same reason why, like, because I used to love telling women that I was going to be an elementary school teacher
Oh, because they would
because,
like
oh, they would lose their minds. I hate that I said, oh my God, I probably sound like such a dick,
you
but
don't.
they would, it, for example, I was at a bar and I was with a friend of mine and we were paying our tab or something. And the waitress saw that my credit card was a school credit card, like a credit union for the school.
Mhm.
And she said, "Oh my gosh, like is your dad like how did you do that?" It's like, "No, I teach third grade." And she ignored my friend for the rest of the time that we were there. And he was like, "What the fuck just happened there?" And I was like, it's because, I said I was a teacher. Like, it was just one of those things. I was like, yeah, it's powerful. And then luckily, though, I met my wife, and it was like, all of these things. I mean, yeah, I would tell girls. I remember I was an assistant kindergarten teacher, and they were like, thought it was the best thing in the world.
So funny.
It
You
is.
don't
I
see
was,
many men in that field, and when you see them in there, they're like super endearing. Yeah,
yeah, or they're super like flamboyant, and I wasn't.
yes, that was the other. That's what I was
Yeah.
gonna go with it.
Oh yeah, I would be in a room. It'd be like the same thing if I was a nursing student, you know. It's
Yep,
probably more now, but there
yep.
were like multiple times I was in a room with like 75 people and I was the only guy. And you're just,
Lucky
yeah. But
you.
anyway, yeah. So what do you think, Marissa? We were in a cult?
Yes, a thousand
Yeah.
percent. We were in a cult. I have no doubts about that.
Okay.
Just you're love bombed. Every aspect of your life is controlled and
Mhm.
micromanaged. You have no independent thought or actions. Um, that's the biggest things for me that kind of lead me to believe that their way is the only way.
Mhm.
Like the leaders are worshipped.
Yeah.
Um, yep, yep. Cult for sure. But we're
Well,
survivors.
yep, we are. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for being as open and vulnerable as you were. Um,
Oh, sure.
adding your story to this conversation. It gets bigger and bigger with each person, and I love it.
It does.
Um,
I feel like we
yeah.
talked forever, and I was really worried that I would have like 30 minutes of stuff to say.
No, no, it's close to two. We're
Yeah,
almost at yeah.
we did it.
Um, we did. So yeah, if you were a member of the ICOC or the ICC and would like to share your story, positive or negative, I really don't care. I just want to hear everybody's stories. You can reach out to me in the email at Clemenz with a Z at gmail.com or find my Instagram page and you can direct message me there. So right on, guys. Thanks for listening, for all your support, and until next time, peace.